So I just finished reading Nevernight by Jay Kristoff a while ago, and there's a few things I want to talk about, so let's get into it. Because I write books too, the first thing I tend to notice about them is usually craft related, so I'm going to talk about craft things first. And one thing that I thought was interesting about Nevernight, I didn't like it, but I didn't dislike it either, is that this book uses all four perspectives in that there's first person, second person, third person limited, and third person omniscient. This book has a narrator. It will directly address the reader sometimes. It's mostly in Mia's perspective throughout the book, but it also jumps around from different characters from time to time. So like I said, all four perspectives. This isn't necessarily a poor storytelling choice, but it can get a touch confusing because there aren't ever any like paragraph breaks or like a dictus to indicate that we're having like a change in perspective, so that threw me a little bit sometimes. Next, the fact that in Nevernight, I felt like the narrator was a little too involved in the story. I feel like whenever you read a book, the intention is to get lost in the world with the characters on their adventure. Your goal as an author should be to make me forget that I'm reading a book, and there is literally a line in this book where the narrator tells the reader, hey, if you don't know what this thing looks like, go flip back to the map at the front of the book so you know what it is I'm talking about. And that, to me, just took me right out of the story. Like, bro, I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice. Don't remind me that I'm reading a story. The point is to make me forget that I'm reading the story. It's supposed to be that captivating, your writing, that enchanting. And another thing I really didn't like this is that Nevernight has footnotes, and I've never read a fantasy book that does that before, and I honestly was not a fan of it. Let me show you what I mean. So here is a random page in the middle of the story. All of this, from this downwards, this is all lore that has nothing to do with the story. It is just world building that is smack dab in the middle of the chapter. Jay Kristoff does this a lot through Nevernight. He likes to add in little nuggets and sprinkle in his lore and his world building, which is cool. But the only problem is my reading experience is not enhanced in any way, shape, or form by having this information, and it takes me out of the story because, like I showed you, that is a huge chunk of text, and for me, by the time I finished reading all of that, I forgot what I just read in the actual story, so it like took me out of the plot. If you go read the Broken Earth trilogy, particularly the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin, one thing she does brilliantly is she ends every chapter with a piece of lore, and she also has interludes. She does the same thing in her other books, the Dreamblood duology, where she starts every chapter with like a proverb or something like that. And the reason this works is because at the beginning of the chapter, the end of the chapter, the lore in your world building doesn't actually interrupt the story. Okay, I know I said I was going to talk about plot, but I talked too much about the craft. So if you want a part 2 to this, where I can talk about the actual story and how I felt about Nevernight, then just let me know and I'll make one.